For those of you on Zoom this evening, if you could please make sure to mute your mics. And for those of you joining on Facebook, please be patient as we may be bringing in Zoom participants. A reminder to all of you watching, if you have questions for us, we'll make every attempt to answer those. Please put those questions in the live stream feed on Facebook and in the chat box on Zoom. So for the incident update as far as acres in containment, the Dixie Fire is currently at 167,430 acres at 18% containment, and there are 4,266 personnel assigned. I'd like to have our first presenter come up, incident meteorologist Julia Rutherford.
Good evening. I'm going to present an update on the fire weather conditions for the Dixie Fire this evening. And so today we've shifted into a warmer and drier weather pattern. We had a strong ridge of high pressure that was over the Great Basin that built over California, and that's bringing in much warmer and drier conditions to the area. Temperatures today about 3 to 5 degrees warmer than yesterday, and we're going to see that trend of warming continue into Saturday. Other effects of that strong ridge is it caused the relative humidities up on the higher elevations, the fire to drop to quite low levels during the early morning hours. It was down to about 4 to 7% up on the ridges, which is pretty impressively dry. And even down lower, recoveries were generally only in the 15 to 20%, which is also significantly dry. We did have a very thick layer of smoke over the area in the morning. That did help some as far as the shading went to keep things a little bit cooler through midday. It actually helped keep the relative humidities a little higher through midday, but then as the more unstable air moved in the afternoon, that drier air's been mixing down. So we're seeing the relative humidities falling right now, and some of those temperatures warming up in the areas that are now less smoky. For the winds, those continue to be out of the southwest. The ones we saw today weren't as strong as what we had yesterday, so that's in a little bit of a decreasing trend. In general, we were seeing gusts in the 10 to 15 mile an hour range, with a few of the higher peaks gusting up to 20. As we go into the overnight hours, we are going to see the northeast flow increase, and that's going to especially favor the North Fork of the Feather River Canyon here. As we move down to the Jarbo Gap area, we'll see winds increasing to about 15 to 20 miles an hour, gusts 20 to 25 along the most exposed ridges. Other places on the fire, as you get further north and further west, those northeast winds will still be there, but they'll be significantly lighter. Other valleys are also going to see different downslope, down canyon drainage winds through the night. All of those canyon winds are going to be a little bit enhanced just due to the hot temperature, so a little breezier than they've been previous nights. Also, it's going to stay quite warm and dry up there, especially up on the ridges. I'd expect we'll see another night with those really low relative humidities. That's all going to set the stage for an even hotter and drier day tomorrow. At the fire elevations in the valley here, generally it's just a little bit below 2,000 feet along the river, up to about 3,000 feet or so. We're looking at high temperatures up to 100 degrees. Even up in the higher ridges, 6,000 to 7,000 feet, we're going to warm up to 80 degrees there. So quite a bit warmer. Relative humidities will be in the upper single digits. The southeast winds will continue to be on the lighter side as compared to what they were earlier during the week. So that 10 to 15 with a few higher gusts out there is what we'll see as a repeat for tomorrow afternoon. Smoke's likely to hang in over the area through early afternoon, and then after that we will still see the extra instability effects coming into play as the inversions break, and we could see some taller columns growing due to that. As we move into for Saturday night, we'll see a return to those northeast drainage winds following the canyons down. And then as we go into Sunday, we're going to be in another pretty warm day, pretty dry day, not quite as extreme on those two factors, but we have mid-level moisture up in the mid and higher levels of the atmosphere moving in, and that's going to return the extra instability effect that we saw in the past that has allowed the columns or the clouds that form on top of the columns to grow extra tall. So that's something that's you'll possibly be seeing Sunday afternoon and evening with the white clouds on top of the smoke columns having the potential to get quite a bit taller. So that's going to be a big watch out day with some potential for some extreme conditions, erratic winds out of those columns if they do form over the fire area. So we move into the Monday through Thursday time period. We are going to undergo a weather pattern transition. We'll see some southwest flow or southeast flow bring in some more mid-level monsoonal moisture. That has the potential to be both helpful and harmful in that it's going to bring the chances for thunderstorms. The thunderstorms are a hazard, of course, because of the lightning and the gusty outflow winds, but the monsoonal moisture looks like it's going to be enough that those storms will bring some precipitation. The trick with thunderstorms, though, is they're really localized and really spotty, so I can't say right now, is this area specifically going to get lucky enough to get precipitation? But there is at least some chance of seeing some isolated storms in the area. So, you know, potentially a bad thing or a good thing or a combination of both, but something we're definitely keeping an eye on as we move towards next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. Our next presenter this evening, Fire Behavior Analyst, Chris Waters.
Good evening, Chris Waters, Fire Behavior Analyst and one of the Deputy Incident Commanders here for Incident Management Team 1 on the Dixie Fire. Here to talk a little bit about fire behavior, specifically what changed a little bit today. If you were watching the horizon or you were somewhere near the column or you could see the column of the Dixie Fire, compared to yesterday, the column actually looked quite a bit different and actually it changed a lot less rapidly. So today, we didn't see near the build in elevation or altitude, and we also didn't see the intensities. The weather today, that hot weather, while it's hot and dry, that hot atmosphere actually kept that column from developing like it did yesterday. Additionally, the spotting that was occurring yesterday that was causing such difficulty in fire spread actually came down in its number and its intensity today. Spotting was still seen out on the fire line, but the fires were not allowed to get themselves established quite as rapidly and quite as numerous because the column, as it went up into the atmosphere, didn't quite go as high as it did the day before. Again, spotting is caused by the lifting of hot flaming material, superheated material into the column, and then the transport winds that are over the fire area actually loft the spots and the hot embers out in front of the fire's edge and actually causes small fires out in front of the main flaming front and it draws the fires together. Right now they're doing suppression operations, both indirect and direct, and one of the big hazards that we have to deal with is actually that spotting activity causing fires further out in front of our work and thereby causing us to have to move further away. One additional fire behavior element that is important about today is that we have very few opportunities where we can actually go what's called indirect, or actually light backfires. The last couple of days we've been given some opportunities where there's been a moderation in the winds and the intensity of the column, and has given us an opportunity to actually build some indirect control line, actually using backfires to create a black between the fire's edge and the available fuels that we're trying to protect, and also the communities and the areas around Lake Almanor. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Waters. Our next presenter this evening that we would like to bring in from the East Zone, from California Interagency Incident Management Team 2, Operations Section Chief John Goss.
Evening, John Goss, Operations Team 2, with a quick summary on the East Zone. So we'll start down at the bottom of the incident here in Division Zulu. Evening, John Goss, Operations Team 2, with a quick situational update for the East Zone. We'll start down here at the bottom of Division Zulu. Fire lines continue to hold throughout the day, so we're having some success from Highway 70 up to Bucks Lake. Crews spent the bulk of the day in there securing that hand line, mopping up and securing that edge from any further spread to the south. Moving over towards Division Whiskey and Union. Crews fire remained active today, actively backing and flanking there. And so we're taking an indirect approach in this portion of the hand line to get you back down into the Highway 70 corridor. Moving up to Branch 20 in Division Tango, Oscar, and November. A lot of the bulk of the fire activity that we saw today was on the spot fire that was established 2 days ago. So crews are out there looking for opportunities to reestablish some existing dozer lines, road systems there, and getting ourselves back into the river corridor there. There was a new start yesterday, the fly incident. So that's going to be branch 23. And the second most activity that we saw today was on the fly incident there. So this fire started again yesterday at about 1600, currently roughly about 3,800 acres. So crews are in the process of going direct and also tying it back into some existing lines to keep it from spreading into the Mount Huff area and then back down into the Highway 70 corridor there.
Thank you, Chief Goss. Our next presenter this evening from the West Zone, CAL FIRE Incident Management Team 1, Operations Section Chief Mike Wink.
Good evening. Just for reference on the map, as a reminder, we've got the communities of Butte Meadows and Sterling City down here on the left side. Due north is Chester, and then to the east is Quincy. So as we start to talk about the west zone of the map, we'll start here in the Belden and Caribou Drainage Road here. And as we go south towards the fire's edge, we're working on tactical patrol, mopping up, protecting those values at risk, making sure there's no hot spots in there, and making sure that everything stays safe. As we come around the corner here, we're heading west and a little bit north, kind of towards Sterling City, still several miles away. But as we turn this corner here, you see this is what we call black line. So we do the anchor, flank, and hold. So we anchor here, and then we start to flank up the side. So going up the left side, and the east zone is going up the right side as we work to contain the Dixie incident here. So activities today in Division Charlie, and that's above to the northeast of Sterling City. Efforts to hold that line. It stayed within its containment line. We had some challenges yesterday, but those did not occur today. As we continue up, we're now southeast of Philbrook into Division Hotel. These lines, again, yesterday gave some challenges. This piece held today within the lines we've reestablished yesterday. So we got primary line and then secondary line or indirect line, like Chief Waters mentioned, out here beyond that. Coming up here towards Snag Lake, Butte Meadows, Jonesville, this was an area that yesterday gave us some challenges with increased fire behavior, short-range spotting, isolated crowning, and runs through heavier fuels, which everybody saw the smoke columns, multiple of them yesterday. This was one of those areas. Through the night and through the day, efforts to contain this, and you see there's X's on the map here, so we're building an indirect line on this to keep this in check and get it boxed in, so to speak, get line around it. They did have observed fire spread from the division and branch directors, the operations section chief that's out there today, and then we also receive infrared product almost hourly. Most of the day, no aircraft have been able to fly in this upper section because of heavy smoke conditions. Anyway, that IR data showed additional fire spread to the west towards Snake Lake, towards Butte Meadows, and towards Jonesville. When we validated that with the folks out there, that's why it went through our process and decided that we needed to evacuate this area here in the Jonesville, Butte Meadows, Snake Lake area, and the sheriff will talk more about that. But that was multiple inputs of products, infrared products, and the folks that are out there. As we come up around here to the top, I'm gonna bump around here to Butts Valley Reservoir. So in the Butts Valley Reservoir area, we went back here to Canyon Dam, and we picked up a road system in the Upper Ohio road system, and we brought the fire's edge with us. So we did last night, the conditions moderated and allowed for prescription to do some of that firing that Chief Waters mentioned. So we started on this road system. We had plenty of resources in place. the relative humidity and the temperature was favorable, and so we were able to put this, do this firing operation, or bring the black line with us. That's the safest thing we can do to build some safety for us. So as we went along the top, we kind of parallel Highway 89 right there, came down here towards Humbug, then went up towards Humboldt, came down Humboldt, and late this morning we stopped about 1.5 miles in on Humboldt, and then did actions going north and then continued to the west. But the folks in the area definitely saw that last night and this morning. They saw, maybe saw folks, saw the fire's edge pretty close to Highway 89 or Lake Amanor. That was us putting in that black line, building that buffer, making it safer for us, and removing those fuels when this fire does get there. So once again, those efforts, trying to connect the dots over here in this area above Butte Meadows and stuff, we're still working on the plan to connect those dots. Back here into Butts Valley Reservoir, we also brought line down the Caribou, and we're trying to tie this back into the reservoir to box in this fire on the east side of the reservoir, and then work our way down to Highway 70. There were historical structures in here that we're working to make those a priority to defend, as well as there are several dozen homes in there that the folks were in there putting dozer line around and making sure those resources were protected. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Wink. Our next presenter this evening we'd like to bring up is the Butte County Sheriff, Sheriff Corey Honey.
Thank you and good evening. As you know, my name is Corey Honey and I'm the Sheriff of Butte County. Tonight I want to give you an update on the Dixie Fire as it relates to the Butte County Sheriff's Office operations. I'm going to begin with the evacuation order and warnings and orders that are currently in place. Earlier this afternoon, the Butte County Sheriff's Office, on the advice of CAL FIRE, upgraded the evacuation warning in the Butte Meadows area to an evacuation order due to the Dixie Fire. As you heard from our previous presenter, the fire was moving in that direction, which is what caused the order to be made. Currently, we have approximately 25 deputies from the Butte County Sheriff's Office in the Butte Meadows area. Earlier this afternoon, I was up there with them. They were going door to door to alert residents of the evacuation order. Our deputies will remain in the area on patrol to secure and protect those properties. In addition to that, we have U.S. Forest Service law enforcement officers and wardens from the California Department of Fish and Wildlife patrolling the Butte Meadows area assisting us. As I said, I was up there earlier. I just came down for this press conference. There are a lot of fire assets up there as well, and I know that CAL FIRE is doing their absolute best to protect that area. In terms of evacuation warnings, currently Inskip and Eastern Concal remain in a warning. I want to take a moment to address concerns within the community. We have been through so many fires, and I know that we're on edge in everywhere, but at this point, the communities of Sterling City, Magalia, and Paradise are not being threatened by the Dixie Fire. That is why those areas are not under a warning, nor have any orders been issued with regard to those areas. But, as is in the case for anybody who lives in Butte County, we have to stay vigilant. You have to continue to pay attention. You always have to be prepared to react to whatever comes our way, be it a warning or order. But at this point, those areas, again, are not being threatened by the fire. If you have additional questions about where the evacuation warnings or orders are, you can view the current evacuation maps of all areas under evacuation orders and warnings in both Butte and Plumas counties. You can do that by visiting Butte County Sheriff's Office website, which is located at buttecounty.net/sheriff. In addition to that, if you haven't already done so, you can sign up to receive code red notifications from that website. I'd like to take this opportunity to talk a little bit about some of the other problems that we've been having. This week alone, we have had 4 fires to contend with in addition to the Dixie Fire within Butte County. Earlier this week, we had a fire in Oroville that caused us to have to evacuate portions of Thermalito. And within the last 2 days, we've had 3 fires, one on Neal Road, one out in the Bangor area, and another one in the Kelly Ridge area. 2 of those were caused by people who were out working. One person was weed eating, another person was using heavy equipment. Folks, we can't afford to have any more fires, and thankfully, CAL FIRE was able to get a hold of those fires and keep them from destroying any structures or spreading. But luck will not last. So if you're going to be out there doing things in the afternoon that could cause a fire, stop. It's not helping anything. It's causing us more problems. Resources are thin, and we just do not need any more of that at all. Last but not least, and I have to reiterate it, it is so important that we stay vigilant and so important that you stay prepared. And for God's sakes, don't do anything that's going to cause any more fires. And that's the end of my update.
Thank you, Sheriff Honey. Our next presenter this evening from Plumas County, the Plumas County Sheriff, Todd Johns.
Good evening. As you know, I am Plumas County Sheriff Todd Johns. I'd like to start by reading evacuation orders that were put into effect yesterday afternoon through today. So under mandatory evacuation orders, starting with Round Valley Reservoir, Dixie Canyon, Indian Falls. These areas include Long Valley, west of Round Valley, Dixie Canyon, south to Indian Falls, south of Indian Falls to the Highway 70-89 junction, Butterfly Valley, Ketty to Highway 70 at Black Hawk Road, Snake Lake. This area includes Spanish Creek Campground, Roundhouse Road, Old Highway West, Greenville and Crescent Mills. Everything west of Highway 89, 36 Junction, west along the south side of Highway 36 to the county line. East side of Ketty, Roundhouse Road and Old Highway West. Taylorsville, all of Arlington Road, and Highway 70 at Black Hawk Road, south to Barlow Road, and everything west to Snake Lake. Those areas are under mandatory evacuation orders. Areas under evacuation warnings are West Quincy, from the top of Cemetery Hill, including Quincy Junction Road, to Mount Huff Road and everything west, Genesee Valley, southeast of Taylorsville, up to the Antelope Lake Road and everything south to Brady's Camp, north and eastern parts of Indian Valley, including Pex Valley Road, east to North Arm and Diamond Mountain Road, East Quincy, Highway 70 near Massac, and everything west towards Meadow Valley. This includes Chandler Road and Quincy LaPorte Road from Highway 70 to Thompson Creek. And I would like to remind those residents who choose to stay in an area under mandatory evacuation orders that if you stay there, that doesn't mean that you can have free movement within the community. I'd like you to recognize that over the last several days, my staff have worked tirelessly since this incident came into Plumas County. We've basically become overwhelmed to an extent. And I have, over the next 36 hours, 105 LEMA officers, so law enforcement mutual aid officers, who are responding to our county. These officers are going to assist me in patrolling areas that are evacuated. And these officers don't know local folks, they don't know the local residents, but they're, again, trying to assist me in protecting your property. So I again ask, if you are in a mandatory evacuated area, you need to stay home and not move freely about the communities. So just to pass on some sheltering information, currently we have 3 shelters open. Spring of Hope Church in Quincy at 59 Bell Lane in Quincy. the Memorial Hall at 180 Gray Street in Chester, and Ridgeway Park at 19725 Ridge Road in Red Bluff. And if you are under a mandatory evacuation area and have no transportation, please call 283-6414. Again, that number is 530-283-6414. And that number will work for folks who are being placed under a mandatory evacuation. So if you were to call that number right now, no one would answer. But if an area were to become under a mandatory evacuation, you could call that number if you need assistance. On transportation, it is a non-medical line. I have a couple questions that I received prior to coming here that I would like to just cover now. One is, if Quincy were to be evacuated, what would happen with the shelter here? We have worked with the city of Portola, and we would open an evacuation center there. Additionally, you may have heard Tehama County is doing evacuations due to a spot fire near their county line. We have spoken with Tehama County, and at this time they're advising Highway 36 will remain open for evacuees seeking shelter in Tehama County. Folks have been asking if we have been able to do evaluations on structures that are potentially lost within the county. As I stated earlier, my deputies have been incredibly busy and dedicated to the safety of the community. We have been unable to do structure loss evaluations at this time, as some of those areas are also too dangerous to get into. Folks that have been evacuated and are concerned about repopulating into specific areas, I would just ask that you tune into the local radio stations, look at our webpage, look at Plumas News, Facebook, and any other social media sites that are carrying our messages. I also have a question about what triggers evacuation warnings or orders within the community. There are many, many things that go into an evacuation order. It starts with usually a phone call by either team in this case, the CAL FAR team in Chico, or our now local team 2. And there's a discussion. We often come up with trigger points, and additionally we look at how long it would take us to actually evacuate an area. So a small community, a trigger point may be much closer because it takes less time to evacuate that area. However, a town like Quincy or a town like Chester, the trigger points may be further away because it takes a lot longer for me to evacuate those areas. I would also encourage the citizens of the county, if you have requests or need information on this incident that we're not covering here, please call our information line at 530-283-3242. That's area code 530-283-3242. And in closing, I would just like to thank the citizens of the county for your tremendous support over the last several days. And I would especially like to thank all of the sheriffs in the state and their officers who have responded to the area to help us patrol our county and make it safer and protect your property during this incident. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff Johns. Our next presenter this evening from the U.S. Forest Service, Agency Administrator, Chris Carlton.
Good evening. I'm Chris Carlton, Forest Supervisor and Agency Administrator for the Plumas National Forest. I'm also here this evening representing Deb Bumpus, the Lassen National Forest Supervisor, and our interagency team here. I really want to start by saying thanks for taking the time to join in. I know that's hard for a lot of us with the connectivity issues we're having. It's one of the challenges we face living in a rural area, but just want to thank you for making the time. I want to acknowledge the impacts that we're having right now. This is the second significant fire in Plumas County in the last couple of weeks. We have continued evacuations. You heard that huge list that Sheriff Johns read off. I'm guessing there's not too many people watching that haven't been either evacuated or affected by the evacuations to some degree already. So, I know, I'm in the same boat right now. We've been evacuated since for at least a few days now. But I'm also really grateful and appreciative for it, and for the sheriff and all the work that they're putting in to do to keep us safe. And I know that they get a lot of questions about the evacuations, but just really grateful that they're out there doing what they do to make sure we know when to go and we get out of there. So, I want to acknowledge the impacts we're having across all of our communities, but I also want to talk for a second about what's being done about it. We have a type 1 incident management team that took command of a portion of the incident here. We have that CAL FIRE team that's been on this incident from the beginning. We have over 4,000 personnel engaged in actively suppressing this fire aggressively. We're doing absolutely everything we can while keeping our firefighters safe to put this fire out and get around it so we can all be safe and get back to our communities. I want to really acknowledge, from this perspective, the cooperation and support we get from all of our cooperating agencies, law enforcement, Caltrans, CHP, all the counties. It really takes all of us to get through something like this. And mostly it takes all of you. It takes everyone here taking the time to watch out for your neighbors, to help each other. As communities, this takes a toll on us, but as communities, it also gives us an opportunity really to come together. And I know that's hard because we're here 2 weeks after we were just doing this, right, over not too far away around Frenchman, and we're still coping with the devastation and the loss that we're having there. And as we go through this, we get these questions about, well, what can I do? And I'm going to ask each of you out there to do a couple of things. First, this is a stressful time for all of us. So as much as we can, let's just remember to be kind. I think everyone here is feeling it right now, but doing what we can for each other. Let's support the law enforcement and the firefighters that are out there working really hard. And we've had questions about, can we contribute to the firefighters? Can we donate to them? And I would say the firefighters are getting meals and they're getting water, and we're doing what we need to support them. It's the evacuees and the people in the communities that if you want to make a difference, I would really ask you to contribute and help out there. And the last thing is have hope. As tough and as challenging as this is, we are going to get through this, and we're going to get through this together as a community, and we're going to move on, and we're going to stay safe. So thank you for the time, and have a good evening.
Thank you, Chris. Our next presenter this evening from the East Zone, one of the Unified Incident Commanders, Nikki Johnny.
Good evening. Hi, my name is Nikki Johnny. I'm the Deputy IC on California Incident Management Team 2. Earlier this week, this team was called to come in and help with CAL FIRE Team 1. And one of the reasons that we came in is because geographically, to get around the fire, it takes long drive times. And we thought it would be best to have another team in here to help manage some of those drive times and geographical locations. So we ended up shadowing California Team 1 in Chico for a day or two, and then we ended up moving over here to Quincy, and we're out of the Plumas Fairgrounds right now. One of our focuses was so that we could stay on this east side, so we zone the fire from a west zone, which is what CAL FIRE Team 1 has, and an east zone, which was what my team is here for. Our job is to start focusing on these areas within this east zone and try to provide the best service and firefighting that we can. Right now, we've had great cooperation with the cooperators, with CAL FIRE team, and all of the people, the sheriff's office, and we've been trying to do what we can to make successful tactics for our firefighters. And I appreciate all your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. Our next presenter this evening from the West Zone, one of the Unified Incident Commanders from CAL FIRE Incident Management Team 1, Nick Truax.
All right, good evening. Just to kind of sentiment what Nikki talked about here in the west zone. We will have basically the 70 corridor to the northeast up to Canyon Dam, including the area of Lake Almanor and the area going towards Tehama County and Butte Meadows. So just kind of a general reference of what my team will be running. Just wanted to update you on a few statistics, and this is for the entire fire. Currently assigned 4,266 personnel, and we keep getting more people in, more folks in every day. That's 365 fire engines, up to 100 bulldozers, 76 hand crews, 60 water tenders, 34 helicopters, and various fixed wing assets that come in, and we order those daily. Couple other things. We do have a damage inspection team. They're about 10% complete now, and they've been working in the Tobin to Caribou area along Highway 70. So far, I'm sad to report that we have 8 destroyed structures, and then there's additional ones they're still trying to validate. As they get those validated, they will turn those over to Plumas County, and notification first needs to go to those property owners before we release any kind of location to anybody else. And I would imagine that everybody could understand that those folks deserve to know that before anybody else. We will be opening a second camp for my team up at George Young Park in Pinetown, and that's just east of Westwood. So we'll have a lot of resources. You'll see kind of moving up into there. So far, we've been having to travel from Chico, and those travel distances are rough on everybody. So we've got that second camp going in. We will brief those resources out of there tomorrow and start servicing those folks out of there. A couple questions that we've received. First one, has this been declared a state of emergency? So a couple things. So we did receive what they call an FMAG. That's a federal emergency assistance grant for Plumas County. So they received that the other day, and what that'll do is that'll reimburse the county and state up to 75%. For some of the costs related to this incident. There has been a state of emergency declared for Plumas County. That was due to the Beckworth. We are hoping to see that extended to this incident. Lassen was also included in the state of emergency for the Beckworth. So that takes a little bit longer. We would expect to see that in the coming days. Another question that we've received, where are the 747s and DC-10s? The 747s are not flying this summer. That company has made some changes, and they were not available on contract to either federal government or CAL FIRE this year. The DC-10s, however, they have been flying the incident. They did. I called my air ops. They did not fly today due to where we could get them in due to the smoke and stuff, but they've been flying throughout the incident out of McClellan Air Attack Base. And then one of the other questions that we have is, why haven't you seen many the tankers today? That kind of depends on where you're at. If we've had clean air, we've been bringing the tankers in. We have been flying air tankers today. But most likely, if you're asking that question from the Almanor area, that smoke column's laid over, and they just haven't been able to get fixed wing in there today. We have been flying helicopters. Kind of an update on those is that we do have 18 Type 1 helicopters. Those are the large sky cranes and the larger Chinooks, Blackhawks, those things with buckets and tanks. We have 6 Type 2 helicopters. Those have a little bit smaller tank, but usually will have helitak crews and stuff associated with them. And then 8 Type 3 helicopters. We use those for helicopter coordination and recon flights, particularly on that.
Thank you, Chief Truax. We do appreciate those questions that have come in. Many of those have already been answered by the experts that you have seen this evening. However, there still are a few outstanding questions. So with that, we'd like to bring back Sheriff Johns, please. All right. Our next presenter we'd like to bring up to answer a few of those outstanding questions will be the Operations Section Chief on the East Zone, Mr. Goss.
So again, I'm Sheriff Todd Johns. I received a question that simply states, what about Chester? So I will say that Chester remains under an evacuation warning. However, as I have indicated to folks over the last several interviews, Chester could be put under a mandatory evacuation order at any time. Again, as you can see in looking at the fire map, this fire has progressively gone towards Chester since day one. We have identified action points that would put Chester under a mandatory evacuation. And I would guess that the next question would be what is the action point? So I will just say that could change daily depending on the fire weather and the wind and the activity of what is going on. So, but as of right now, Chester remains under evacuation warning. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff Johns. We'd like to bring back up the Operations Sections Chief on the East Zone.
Questions that have come up in the chat box there. So a quick informational on how we name fire. So the question was why is the fly fire called the fly fire? So all fires, naming conventions all starts at the time of that initial start of the incident there. So the dispatch center that was in charge of the fly incident was the Plumas Dispatch Center. And usually the way they name fires is they grab a descriptive geographic location. So in this case, close proximity to Butterfly Creek, they dropped the butter off and then it became the fly incident. So that's how we got the fly incident to be named. And some more on the status of that particular fire, because again, these are two separate fires, the Dixie and the Fly. The initial attack resources, when they showed up yesterday afternoon, it was already 10 to 15 acres, throwing spots out in front of the main fire and headed up the hill. So from the initial start of that fire, resources on scene had their hands full. It was a combination of resources from the Dixie that helped an initial attack, as well as the Plumas National Forest initial attack resources that have been here covering. By the end of the evening last night, it was an upwards area of 1,600 acres as far as size. At 2,100 last night, there was 250-foot flame lengths coming off of that incident. And you could definitely see the glow from the town of Quincy. So right now, approximate acres is 3,800 acres, and we're sitting at 5% contained on the fly incident. It is the priority for the East Zone there, the fly incident there, just because of the threat to the town of Quincy itself. So the focus is on that right flank as you're looking uphill as it's burning up towards Mount Huff. And again, it's going in an easterly direction. So the emphasis on the fly fire is to keep it from spreading any further to the east towards Quincy. So as far as the status of Greenville, Indian Creek, Taylorsville, they're not directly threatened within the next 24 to 36 hours, but we're definitely not out of the woods either for those communities that I just mentioned there. As far as the city of Twain, down in the Highway 70 corridor, we've got engines, we've got large structure city engines, we've got wildland engines, we've got hand crews down there, we've got bulldozers there, so that definitely is in the direct path. And they've been focused the last couple days on doing the mitigation around the structures, trying to reduce the amount of fuel that are around those structures, and still being prepared to defend those structures down in Twain. Back to the fly. So a question came in about it. Has it spotted over Mountain Huff? And the answer is no. There are currently no spots up and over Mountain Huff or in the Grizzly Ridge area. And then finally, a quick update on Bucks Lake. As I talked about before, that's the piece of containment line that has not moved the last couple of days. Resources are out there, continue to mop up and secure. So we're feeling very optimistic in the Bucks Lake area that the Bucks Lake proper is not going to be impacted by any kind of direct fire spread there.
Thank you. Our next presenter we'd like to bring back up to answer some questions from the West Zone Operations Sections Chief, Mike Wink.
So I have several questions. I'll take a few moments here, but update for the Chester area. So It was just mentioned by a previous speaker that that area is evacuated. However, fire spread has not. Most of our fire spread has been to the north and the east. We did have some to the west, so that is very dynamic based on fuels, terrain, and the wind and weather. But for right now, Chester is not having fire spread go towards it. Is Magalia in danger? So Magalia down here on the map, once again, current conditions, current fire spread models, the weather and topography do not indicate that we're have great concern of fire going that far south, so no. How close is the fire to Prattville? Prattville is right up here on Highway 89 on the shore of Lake Almanor, and you can see where the fire's edge is in proximity to that. So that area does have kind of black line below it that I mentioned earlier from where we did the firing operation parallel to Highway 89. So while there is fire several miles away, it is not to have fire that's quickly spreading in that direction or anything indicated like that. So it's a question about structure defense or infrastructure protection, values at risk. So both zones have groups identified for surge resources. So there are multiple strike teams of engines, and strike team engines is 5. So there's typically 10 of those a day, so that's 50 or so in surge capacity that can respond to any areas of the fire that have increased activity that are threatening those values at risk, whether it be structures, critical infrastructure, private property, our natural cultural resources. So we have those built into the plan. Those are available every day and we can share across the east zone and the west zone depending on what the threat was. Yesterday, when the fly fire started, we sent our surge capacity resources over there to assist. And if we have the need, of course, we'll be doing that. They'll send stuff our way as well. Our inmate crews being used on the fire. Yes, there's approximately 18 of our inmate firefighting hand crews on the fire. They're out there doing very difficult and arduous work, and we appreciate that very much. A question about the cattle. So we've been working with either leaseholders on the federal lands and or private property owners with their cattle. There's a process in place through our liaisons, typically through the local sheriff or the ag commissioner, working with those folks if they need to get in, if it's safe to get those cattle out. So we are taking those inputs. Those folks are communicating with us, and those concerns are being addressed that we are aware of. Are there future plans to set backfires or burning operations? There is always the possibility of that when we have the chance to put in secondary line or indirect line and the conditions are favorable and the terrain, the fuels and the weather and the humidity. We can certainly use that as a tool to bring the fire's edge to us, to create that buffer so that we control the edge of the fire before it comes to us. So yes, there is certainly many opportunities as we continue to anchor, flank, and hold and box this in. There's another question about aircraft. Well, the IC mentioned that there are a lot of aircraft assigned to the fire. I talked about in the Lake Almanor area that it's heavy smoke conditions, very dark, very heavy smoke, so we're not able to get aircraft. A lot of folks have access to phones or computers. You can see a lot of the aircraft flying. At one point this afternoon, aircraft are trying really hard to get into the northern part of the fire, but they were flying circles back and forth from Philbrook Brook, back here around to Twain and back and forth, just trying to find a way to get in underneath the smoke column, get in there, give recon, get aircraft in there, get helicopters in there. And sometimes the conditions, the smoke is just too thick, too down, close to the ground. They can't see the terrain of the earth, and just too dangerous to fly helicopters or fixed wing. That's it for my questions. And in closing, please, if you have a wildland fire in your area, make sure you have a plan. Go to www.readyforwildfire.org for tips and checklists to make sure you're prepared.
Thank you, Chief Wink. The next presenter we'd like to bring back up to answer a few questions is our fire behavior analyst, Chris Waters.
So hello there. Several general questions as it relates to the wind and weather on this incident. So first of all, as a reminder, fire behavior is the interaction between three basic elements: fuels, weather, and topography. And the most important element that we have to worry about while we're fighting fire is that of the weather. The weather influences just about everything. So to deal with those weather-related effects, we have an incident meteorologist, highly professional, highly trained individual. Their job is to provide us with short and long-term weather outlooks and forecasts that we use on the line to help direct our activities. Some general discussion about winds. Winds are the most, or the wind and what the wind is doing is the most important single element within the weather that we have to deal with. And talk a little bit locally about what the normal wind patterns are here in this area are generally a west to southwest wind. And when we say west to southwest wind, what we're talking about is the direction the wind is coming from. So southwest winds are generally over the fire area. They develop early in the morning and they continue to increase until the late afternoon. And then the late afternoon, when the Earth's surface starts to cool off and that air that's suspended over the mountains turns around and starts to come downhill as it gets heavier as it cools. And that would be a northeast wind, or a wind that follows the canyons back down to the Central Valley. And if you're at Jarbo Gap at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, you can actually get a real sense of that when you're parked there. There's one wind event that was asked about in the questions. When we say northeast wind event can be best characterized as an abnormal or a non-normal event. They occur every year, normally in the fall, but they can actually happen occasionally in other times of the year. And these northeast wind events are ones where the air originates in the Great Basin, northeast of our location, and they originate up in the desert, and then they move across the Sierra Nevadas or the Cascades down to the lower elevation of the valley. Those winds, as they pass over the mountains and they start to go downhill, or that air starts to move downhill over the mountains towards the valley floor, actually heat up, dry, and compress. And a really good example of that we're all used to hearing about is the Santa Ana wind event, but we also get them in any mountainous terrain across the United States. We get them here, we get them in the Sierras, and they're a very challenging wind event for us to deal with. But generally speaking, right now we're seeing a diurnal pattern, which is daytime winds coming out of the west or southwest, and then in the evening those winds cool down and they start to go down canyon, and this cycle repeats itself every day. The exception coming up this weekend will be on Sunday, when we start to see possible thunderstorm development. And we have thunderstorm development, that means there's moisture in the atmosphere, and that also means that we can have thunderstorms and then also unpredictable downdraft winds. There was a question about how do we deal with those kinds of events. As again, we have a meteorologist that gives us an indication of the timing. The meteorologist actually watches the radar. We can actually see these things on radar, and we can predict pretty much in real time what they're going to do. And then all the resources that are on the line are actually briefed, and they change their tactical engagement so that they can anticipate and they can react to any changes in the wind on the line, and they know about it ahead of time so they can make plans to safely prepare for any changes that may be unanticipated. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Waters. We do appreciate all the questions that have come in this evening, and we have answered most of those questions for you. We'd like to thank all the presenters that have joined us as well to give you this great information. Just a few things before we close out. If you would like to find the evacuation maps for your county, you can go for Plumas County, you could go to Plumas County Sheriff's website, as well as in Butte County, you could go to the Butte County Sheriff's website. There is, after this presentation, a screen that will come up with a QR code that will link you to the evacuation maps that you may utilize. Also to let you know, we are doing updated information every morning at 7 a.m. another update in the afternoon, as well as an incident update at 7 p.m. There will be a slide after this as well with a QR code that you can scan to link you to that incident update. There was a question about how to join the Zoom link. Again, there will be a slide at the end of this presentation that you can utilize that QR code to get you to the Zoom link so you can join us again tomorrow. Also, at the end of this presentation, there's a list of all of our information boards that are out in the community. Please take advantage of looking at that list, and if you'd like to speak to someone in person, you may go to that information board tomorrow. We will have folks out there and the most up-to-date information in your community. Also, the call center line has been broadcast through the screen, so please use that number if you have questions. Please join us tomorrow, Saturday, July 24th at 7 p.m., again here on Facebook Live as well as Zoom, for a Dixie incident update. But in the meantime, you may find information by going to NC Web, searching the Dixie incident. You could go to the CAL FIRE homepage at www.ca.fire.gov. Also, please continue to follow social media platforms for the Alaskan National Forest, Plumas National Forest, and CAL FIRE BTU. We appreciate your time this evening. Thank you for joining us.